And welcome to BBC News. The singer and entertainer Cilla Black has died at her home in Spain. She was 72. In a lengthy career, Cilla Black moved from recording artist to television superstar, becoming one of the most popular figures in light entertainment. Lord Grade, the former executive chairman of ITV, described her as the queen of British show business. Our arts correspondent David Sillito looks back at her life and achievements.
Anyone who ever dreamed could look at me.
Cilla Black has been part of British life for more than 50 years. 11 top 10 hits, a mainstay of the Saturday night schedules over 4 decades. Her death at her home in Spain, a shock to her friends, her family, and the many people who've worked with her over the years. Some right back in the beginning of her career in the 60s.
72 is no age to leave us all. So many people are going to be so upset. She has such a following. Everybody loved her with all the shows she did. She had that, as we say, what people always said about me, that common touch. They call it a common touch when you get to everybody.
And it had all begun here, in the Cavern Club of the 60s. Priscilla White, the young cloakroom assistant, had sung, hung out with the Beatles, and attracted the attention of their manager, Brian Epstein.
I've been singing since I was 14 around the clubs in Liverpool. They thought that Brian Epstein, the lovely Brian Epstein, just came along and made the Beatles and myself. But what everybody forgets, we were all going for about 4 or 5 years before.
What's it all about, Alfie?
Her first hit had been a Burt Bacharach song, and he took charge with another, Alfie. She was always hard-working, determined, but Mr. Bacharach demanded 31 takes. Thankfully, it paid off. But what set her apart was that slightly cheeky, down-to-earth personality. Perfect for television. In the 70s, up to 20 million would sit down to watch Cilla. The wits, the easy rapport, blind dates, surprise, surprise. She was the queen of Saturday night.
I only was with her a couple of weeks ago. I've seen her twice in the last few weeks. And as you always, she looked immaculate. That was the thing about Cilla. She always looked spot on.
She was undoubtedly the queen of British show business. If Bruce Forsyth was the king, she was certainly the queen. She had so many rare talents.
Step inside, love.
Paul McCartney said it had been a privilege to know and love her. Other friends spoke of their shock, but also what it was that made her special.
People always say, why do you think Cilla was just so popular? Because we all feel as if we owned a little piece of her. But the fact is, she had that Liverpool aspect of being down to earth. So she could talk to anybody and could make anybody laugh.
What's it all about, Alfie?
She had that star quality that was always rooted in her humble beginnings. The cheeky, teenage cloakroom assistant of the clubs of 60s Liverpool.
Well, earlier I spoke to the BBC Radio 2 and BBC London presenter Tony Blackburn, who told me he was shocked to hear that Cilla had passed away.
I was broadcasting over the road and you know, the news came in. I couldn't believe it, and it was just incredible because I knew her very well. I did the Cilla programmes and things like that, and you know, I did the first Radio 2 show I did was with Cilla.
What was she like to work with?
Oh, she was lovely. She was very, very, you know, she just wanted everybody to do well, everybody to have fun, and she had a great sense of humour. And what you saw on television was Cilla Black, you know, that was it. There was no pretense about her or anything. And to suddenly hear today that, you know, she's no longer with us is a real shock.
And of course, in the early days on Caroline and Radio 1, you would have been playing some of her first hits.
Well, absolutely. I think people forget how important she was in the early days of, you know, pop music.
She was part of that scene, wasn't she?
Well, she was, in Liverpool.
That made it happen in Liverpool.
Yeah, in the Cavern, you know, with the Beatles and Brian Epstein, and I think we forget now how many hit records she had. I mean, I've been playing them all most of today, in fact, in her memory. But
perhaps the shame for her, unlike the Beatles and some of the bands that she knew and performed alongside with at the Cavern, she didn't make it in America, did she?
No, she didn't. No, not in America. But I don't think that really bothered her. I mean, she had so much success over here with all the TV shows and Surprise, Surprise and the dating shows that she did as well. So she had a wonderful career. And of course, she gave up that program on air. She suddenly came out and said, "I'm not going to be doing this anymore," which was a surprise to everybody. But she was a lovely person to be with. That's my main memory of her.
And that is perhaps why she's been described as a national treasure, because what you saw is what you got, off screen and on screen.
Well, on the radio today, I mean, people have been texting in saying it's like losing one of the family. And I think that's the way she was. And, you know, we felt that it was just Cilla Black, and it doesn't seem possible. You know, I mean, it just doesn't seem possible. She's no longer with us. It's just strange. I can't, you know, and still it's sinking in, I think, to a lot of people. And, you know, when I played her records today, people were texting in and saying, you know, we've got tears in our eyes, because it can't be possible.
Do you think people will want to remember her as a singer, though? Because I remember watching an interview with her recently where she said, I think it was on the BBC, actually, where she said, I always wanted to be a singer. That's always what I wanted. The TV thing kind of happened. Do you think she would just prefer us to remember her music rather than Blind Date and Surprise?
I don't know. I think a bit of everything. I think she was sort of multi-talented, really. I mean, she was a great singer. She gave us some lovely songs. At the same time, she was a great TV presenter. And what the strength she had, she made it look easy. And it's not easy not to do with doing what she was doing. And it was just like tuning into a friend. And if you knew her, as I was privileged to know her, she was like that, a very warm, loving personality. And it's just tragic that she's no longer with us.
Tony Blackburn speaking to me earlier. Well, our correspondent Tom Burridge has been in southern Spain, where Cilla Black lived.
Well, that sense of loss and grief back home in Britain will surely be replicated here in southern Spain, where Cilla Black spent a lot of time here at her home just outside Marbella. You know, there are hundreds of thousands of British people who live in Spain. Many more are currently on holiday, particularly in this part of the country. So as the news starts to filter through, people will be, I guarantee, taking time out of their holidays, out of their lives, to remember what Cilla Black meant for them. Not only her contributions to Saturday night television, but to so much more. Earlier I spoke to Spanish police who confirmed that Cilla Black had died, and died late last night. They believe of natural causes, although that should be confirmed at a post-mortem in Malaga at some point tomorrow. But of course, the sense of grief and loss, you know, the loss of a national treasure, those two words which are so often overused, but in Cilla Black's case so apt, is still filtering through. And I think, you know, the celebration of her life and her contribution to British culture is only just beginning.
Well, joining me now is Jeff Evans, and Jeff persuaded Cilla Black to visit Holyhead after it was named the most depressed place in Britain. Good evening to you, Jeff.
Good evening to you.
Just so, you wrote to Cilla when she was presenting the Surprise programme and persuaded her to come and cheer everyone up, I suppose.
Yes, I wrote to her in 1988, and as a result of that, Surprise, and Cilla Black attended the town and actually carried out the biggest ever feature that Surprise ever carried out. A wonderful occasion.
What did they do?
Well, they came into the town. We had a fun day on the beach. We had all types of celebrities in the town. We joined in a 300-person conga along the breakwater and Porthdavick Beach. At the end of the programme, they actually showed Holyhead featured like the Hollywood with the big imposed name on the top of the mountain. But more than that, she went and restored and showed the rest of the country that Holyhead wasn't a depressed town, but was a town which was economically had problems, but only wanted a bit of support to relaunch itself. And as a result of her show, we had thousands of people over the next few years visiting the area, seeing what a wonderful area we lived in. Now, what I would say about Cilla Black, and you know, her most famous hit was Anyone Who Had a Heart. In fact, I can assure everyone, Cilla's heart was bigger than her song.
Are you saying then that she was the driving force in lifting the town's spirits after being named the most depressing area in Britain? This wasn't just about making good telly for her. Is that what you're saying?
I'm saying it was totally that, because outside of the broadcast, I spoke to Cilla in her caravan, her on-site caravan. She wanted to know of the history, the problems, the issues, so that she could show us in the light that we were trying to to let the rest of the country know. And she did it quite positively, quite professionally, and with care, a caring attitude. So it wasn't about the job, it wasn't about turning up to react to one person requesting. It is coming along, identifying the issues, and saying, hey, I can make a difference here, and she made a difference.
Jeff, thank you very much for your time. Yet another wonderful story about Cilla Black. Jeff Evans there. Cilla Black, who has died at the age of 72.